something that like says to accept record, please do that. Okay. So we're gonna do a quick icebreaker and do this as we're kind of talking, but we wanna share, have you voted yet or even registered to vote? We really wanna know because this is gonna come into play a little later. So let us know if you have you voted yet or have you registered to vote yet? Okay, do that now. Let's see your answers. We can get the chat up. I voted by ballot, or yeah, mail-in, if anyone is wondering. Okay, so keep those coming and we'll move on. But we want to do some fun club introductions because I'm not the only one running this meeting, obviously. So you can go ahead and do that. Everyone who else from AMWA and GirlUp, you want to unmute yourselves.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Ria, and I'm the president of AMWA, and I'm joined by so many of my wonderful members, so it's good to see everyone and also everyone here from GirlUp and Ignite. So yeah, AMWA stands for the American Medical Women's Association, and we're really here to bring together those in medicine and any healthcare related fields to advocate for women's health rights and wellness initiatives. And we also do this by supporting professional and personal development towards the health professions. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, our Instagram handle is there. It is at AMWA_@OSU. So thank you everyone again for coming.
Hi guys, I'm Anjali and I'm from GirlUp. So basically GirlUp is all about equality, empowerment, and education of women. We want to stand up and advocate for the rights of every girl, as it says, and raise awareness on the issues that women face. And our Instagram is GirlUp@Ohio State, or GirlUp Ohio State. So yeah, thank you guys for coming.
And then last but not least, I'm Lauren. I'm the vice president of Ignite. And Ignite's goal is to really encourage and empower young women and honestly anyone else who wants to develop their political ambition, civic engagement, and leadership skills. So we strive to really have a supportive and inclusive community and build the next generation of leaders. And our Instagram is also down below. Please give us a follow. And the rest of my exec board is here as well tonight. So super excited to see everyone here, as well as our National Ignite Fellow, Maggie. So that's amazing. Yeah, so that's kind of just a little bit about all of us. So something that, just to go over quickly, like what we're going to talk about today. So tonight we're going to talk about all surrounding civic engagement and being a really informed voter because this upcoming election is super important. So first we're going to talk about making a voting plan, then we're going to move into some issues that are of particular interest to women. It was really hard to narrow these down, so this is just honestly a few sampling of them. And then we'll also talk a little bit about productive dialogue when you're having any political conversations. And at the end, we're going to go into breakout rooms and have a fun discussion so you all can be kind of interactive with this. So first up is making a voting plan, and I'll just quickly go over what a voting plan is. So basically when you're making a voting plan, you want to envision yourself voting and identify any potential barriers you encounter. This is especially relevant right now with COVID happening. And basically like you need to expect the unexpected. So it's really great to see everyone's kind of different ways that they're voting in the chat. We have a really diverse set of like different ways to vote, which is great to recognize that. So you really need to make like a plan and then a backup plan. So early voting turnout this year is at an all-time high. So anticipate lines when you go in, if you're going in person, whether that's early or November, and have a backup plan for that. And then if you plan to vote by mail, anticipate delays because of COVID. The USPS is having delays, so send it in as soon as possible. I know I already sent mine in because I'm in Wisconsin, but we got ours sent a lot earlier. So just send it out as soon as you can. And if you drop off an absentee ballot at like an official box, be sure to locate where the official drop box is. You always want to make sure that like you know where your vote is going. I don't know, I feel very protective over that, so I want to remind everyone. And then always contact your county clerk if you have any questions. That's what they're there for. And then to actually create a specific voting plan, these are just some questions to look for, and you can always, we'll talk about like ways for you to interactively create a voting plan in a minute. But some questions to ask are, when will you be voting? Where are you going to vote? Are you going to the polls or mail in or dropping off your ballot? If you're going in, or if you're dropping it off, how are you going to get there? Or if you're mailing it, how are you going to get stamps? Do you need a ride? Make sure to coordinate that. Can you bring anyone else with you? Obviously, being very careful of COVID right now. But do you need to secure childcare, take off work, or plan around classes or anything like that? And then do you have all the necessary documents? So I'm not sure where everyone is located, especially this semester, but in Ohio, there are very specific voter ID laws, which I have feelings about, but you need to make sure you bring the necessary documents to the polls. And a great way to do that is you can Google it, honestly, to make sure you're looking at an official site, but it's ohiosos.gov/elections/voters/IT-requirements, and then another slash. So definitely look that up, because especially as a college student, if you're not voting at your main address, make sure you're registered to vote at your current address now. All of that kind of great stuff. So now for actually voting or making a voting plan, shout out to our national Ignite. So something that Ignite specifically is doing, that's why I'm kind of talking right now, is that Ignite National has made this amazing thing called the Sophia bot. And if you scan this QR code, it'll take you to a website and you're like interactively chatting with basically a bot, and it'll kind of give you all this information of making your voting plan based on what state you're in and all of that great stuff. Another thing, if you don't scan it, I'll leave it up for a second, is that iwillvote.com is also a great resource, but like, we'd love you to use our Sophia bot. This is really helpful for creating a voting plan, because it's super important to start thinking about that now. Okay, so then we'll move on to being an informed voter. So we're gonna talk about some presidential candidates. There are more than one, because there are third parties running in this election, but we're gonna talk about the Democratic and Republican nominees. So this is kind of some of the issues that we think women, or we as women when we were creating this, care about, and get into that. So take it over.
Okay, cool. So the first issue that we thought was important to bring up is gender pricing. So basically there are two taxes in place at the moment, the pink tax and the tampon tax. And the pink tax is gender-based price discrimination. So basically women are paying more money for products similar or the same as men's products. A common example is like body razors or like undergarments and stuff. Women have to pay a lot more for those things. And the tampon tax, which kind of goes hand in hand with the pink tax, is basically a special tax levied directly on menstrual products. Thank you. So the first candidate is Joe Biden, and basically he believes that women are uniquely and disproportionately impacted by many policies in place. The Obama-Biden administration had created this thing called the White House Council on Women and Girls. It is no longer a thing anymore, but he has plans to create the White House Council on Gender Equality. He supports women education, eliminating the pay gap, but he has not commented specifically on gender-based price discrimination. And then there's Donald Trump. He also has not commented specifically on gender-based price discrimination. He has, however, suspended some measures taken to ensure equality in the workplace, school, reproductive rights, etc. And he disbanded the White House Council on Women and Girls. And thus far, there's currently nothing in its place.
All right. So next we're going to cover some abortion and reproductive health policies and where our candidates, the major candidates, stand on that. So as you all know, abortion, it protects, Roe v. Wade protects the woman's right to an abortion only until viability. And that's the point at which a fetus is able to live outside the womb, generally by the start of the third trimester. So this is a heavy and challenging topic today. And as I mentioned, each candidate does have different ideologies and orders behind them. Biden's stances are more on incoming policy, and then Trump's stances and information today that I'll be presenting is actions he has already taken within these past 4 years. So where we are kind of right now is that the global gag rule is in place, and the global gag rule, it is preventing foreign organizations from receiving federal funding from the U.S. Global Health Assistance, and they cannot provide information, referrals, or any abortion services, even if these clinics and other healthcare facilities can provide for them using their own money. So they're basically being cut off from U.S. Global Health Assistance. And one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of these clinics have other services that they offer besides abortion, such as HIV/AIDS care and other contraceptive care. And then a nationwide nationwide thing that we are also talking about today is that Planned Parenthood has left the federal Title X family planning program rather than complying to their abortion criteria. Similar to the gag rule, they are not able to use taxpayer money to provide for abortion services. So Planned Parenthood had to leave, and they have lost a lot of money in funding. So then moving to the next slide, specifically Biden would like to codify state laws that undermine Roe v. Wade, because as we know that there are a lot of states that are putting in different rules and regulations on abortion services. And so he really seeks to make Roe v. Wade a little bit stronger. Another point for Biden is that he would like to restore the federal funding for Planned Parenthood, and so that they won't face any discrimination or a gag that has been placed on them. The other order would be to rescind the global gag rule so that foreign assistance can be provided to these health services that also provide for more than abortion. And then they would also like to restore the Affordable Care Act's contraception mandate so that more people have access to the contraceptive care that they would like to have. And on the next slide, we will be going over yeah, there we go. Thank you. So the next slide is Trump's information gathered from his campaign website. And this is what he has already put in place in his past 4 years. So the Human and Health Services announced changes to Title X to stop taxpayer dollars from supporting abortion providers. And the Trump admin also issued a rule allowing healthcare workers to refuse to provide services like abortion, sterilization, or assisted suicide if they cite a religious or conscientious objections. And up to date, I have not found any current policy moving forward, but we do know that right now with the current confirmation hearing process going on, that things might look a little bit different potentially if Honor Amy Coney Barrett is put into the Supreme Court. So that is what I have for abortion and reproductive rights.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the gender pay gap. So a lot of you probably know what this is. It's like, so currently women are still making about 78 cents to a white man's dollar. I think so that's specifically for white men. It varies for other races of men. Their studies also show that Black women and Latina women make even less, so about 61 cents to a dollar for Black women and 53 cents to a dollar for Latina women. So right now, the current legislation that addresses this is the Equal Pay Act of 1963. So that was on a national level. And there's also been the Lilly Ledbetter Act, which kind of amended that and kind of added to that. And then right now in Ohio, we have the Equal Pay Law, which is similar to what it has on the national level, but I'll go over that a little bit more later. And then some of the proposed legislation to kind of fix the gender gap, which hasn't closed that much since these laws, would be the Paycheck Fairness Act, which has been proposed on the national level, and the Ohio Equal Pay Act, which has been proposed on the state level. So, so the reasons so some of the reasons that this legislation might not be as effective, or just a little bit about the current legislation. So right now there are a lot of exceptions that keep women from being able to hold their employers accountable, and like filing successful claims. So one of the exceptions that they have is the kind of like a catch-all phrase. It says that states can make their wages differ on basis of anything except for the factor of sex. So like an employer can pretty much come up with any reason as long as it doesn't have to do with the sex of their employer. So the Paycheck Fairness Act that's been proposed on the national level, and they've tried to pass this a lot of times. Essentially, it seeks to eliminate the wage gap by collecting data on women's workers' salary and kind of having that posted. So they would do a lot more like data collection. And they also want to have more like informational and like training about women's rights in the workplace. And they want to help women who have faced past discrimination kind of uh, be able to like file against like the discrimination that they've been faced based on their like paycheck difference. And right now it's passed in the House, but they haven't done anything to like in the Senate, so it's just kind of sitting there. And then the Ohio Equal Pay Act, it essentially seeks to help by prohibiting the gag rule, and this is different than the gag rule that Rhea talked about, but this one is basically you're not allowed to discuss salaries with other employers, so this would kind of revoke that, and so people could have open discussions about their salaries with each other. And also it would require Ohio businesses that do business with the state, so some would be exempt from this, but they are required to obtain an equal pay certificate. And then finally, they would also be required to have evaluations of their pay scale to make sure it's based on responsibilities and working conditions and not other factors. And right now, it hasn't been passed. So Biden, during his term, he mentioned that he helped enact the Lilly Ledbetter Act, which is the Fair Pay Act. And he supports Senator Patty Murray and Congresswoman Delores' Paycheck Fairness Act. Yeah. And then Trump, I tried to find stuff. He doesn't have anything that mentions like that addresses the wage gap or like his stance on that. So.
Okay, sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute myself. So now we are going to move on to some other issues that we didn't get a chance to talk about as much tonight, and we don't want to make it seem like we're trying to lump them all in to get through quickly because these are very, very important issues. But it's really important to recognize that women's issues are very intersectional. So this can include many things like disability justice, which again, I haven't even mentioned, environmental justice, and then two things on the side of racial equity and justice, and then LGBTQ plus rights. So just a little overview, I guess, about some policies is that women of color are impacted by gender discrimination more severely and more often than their white counterparts. And this is super important to recognize that the fight for racial justice is a fight for women's equality as well. These two go hand in hand. And so it's not, I guess, correct to say that they're separate issues from one another because women have all forms of identities. They're not just women. And then some policy issues that impact communities of color are immigration, the state of policing, criminal justice system, which I guess like also includes the legality of private prisons and their operations, healthcare as well, and then reparations, just to name very briefly a few. And then for LGBTQ rights and issues, just again, like women's rights are LGBTQ rights. So the fight for gender equality is not related to sex, if that makes sense. So those who don't necessarily identify as women, for example, still face this tampon tax and other related issues just because You may not identify as a woman as your gender. You can still menstruate, and if you do not menstruate, you can still identify as a woman. So again, these issues are very intersectional. And then policy issues that impact the LGBTQ identity include gender-affirming healthcare. Again, healthcare is a big thing, especially in this election. Workplace discrimination protections. So we talked a little bit about like pay gap and then kind of like workplace dynamics. But while technically sex is considered a protection, your sexual preference, I don't really like to call it a preference, but sexuality is not really protected in that way. So adoptions, there's, I guess, technically some debate about if people in the LGBT community should be allowed to adopt, and refusal of services just based on identity. So those are a few kind of issues that are also important in the fight for women's rights as well. So just to briefly go over the two candidates' policies on this. Also, just so everyone knows, Ignite, I can only speak on behalf of Ignite, but we are a nonpartisan organization, so throughout this whole presentation, when we are giving the candidates policies, we are just stating what we have found on their websites and through reliable sources. So we are not telling you how you should feel about these candidates' policies, but we are we are just like letting you know what they are, and it's up to you to be that informed voter and research them and see what candidates' policies most align with yours. So for Biden, he believes that policing should be reformed, but not defunded or abolished. He's kind of had some mixed messages about this at sometimes, but that's kind of the conclusion he's kind of put out there. He believes that private prisons should be eliminated as a requirement for this kind of grant program for state and local municipalities that he wants to put into place. And then he wants to reverse the Trump administration's border policies of separating families. He believes in expanding and reforming the legal immigration system to make it easier to immigrate to America. And then he also believes that LGBTQ people are entitled to equal protection in the workplace as well. So then moving on to Trump, he believes that the police should not be defunded or abolished. He doesn't make many mention of reform. He does mention supporting the police. He believes that groups or businesses, generally groups, should have the right to refuse services or employment to LGBTQ plus people as an exercise of religious freedom specifically. So he believes that under the Constitution that they have this right in a way. And then he also believes that those who entered the country undocumented should not really be allowed an easy path to citizenship. And then he has this zero tolerance policy for illegal immigration, and does not believe in reforming the criminal code that makes it a misdemeanor crime, I believe, to come to the country undocumented. So moving on, we'll have Zara talk about creating respectful dialogue, which is another important part of being an informed voter, kind of as you're having discussions with your family and even after the election.
Yeah, we wanted to add this slide, especially with the election going on, but we wanted to have a little slide on how to create a respectful dialogue. So one of the first points especially is to share your perspective and listen to the perspective of others. Notice and respect differences and seek to understand them. But I put a note that you do not have to feel obligated to respect the differences. There can be differences in political opinions. However, you're not obligated to understand someone's difference in opinion when it comes to an identity or a human right. It's important to try to understand each other, but if that person is trying to offend something, especially when you identify as that, you can always leave that conversation or try to create like a space where you are not uncomfortable and understand that you are important and this is for your mental health as well. And then also to inquire about and seek to understand the assumptions of others. Question the other person's thoughts. When you're questioning them, you're allowing yourself the opportunity to counteract what they are saying, but as well as make them rethink their own thoughts. By doing this, you're allowing them to think more deeply and understand why they truly hold these opinions. And by doing this, they can make them rethink as well.
Okay, so then just a few more resources to explore more of the candidates' opinions and learn more about third-party candidates, because there are two, the Green Party and the Constitution Party. I can't remember. It's like the Libertarian. There's some great websites, the candidates' websites, which I haven't listed, but that's a pretty easy Google search. And then another website that is really great is called 2020election.procon.org. And this is run by Britannica. I think it's a very reliable source. It compiles kind of both the candidates' official policies and things they've said in the past, so you can kind of look through it, but make sure to kind of read that information and then come to your own conclusion about it. Another great thing is to see what is specifically on your ballot. So who you're voting for, go to ballotready.org. This is really important because we talked a lot about the presidential election, but there's also local and statewide elections that are just as important. And so it's really important for that you are also informed on those candidates as well. If there's any referendums happening, everyone's ballot, depending on their district, is going to look slightly different. So I would recommend being prepared before you vote about that. And then we missed a slide at the beginning. I don't know why it went past it, but we'd also like to do a land acknowledgement. This is, we feel, super important as groups to acknowledge kind of the land that maybe we're not all gathered on right now, but that we go to school on.
So as a land-grant institution, it is necessary to recognize that this land on which the Ohio State University lies could not be used if it were not for the suffering and forced removal of the multiple indigenous nations who lived here. The groups who remember today include the Delaware, Miami, Shawnee, and Wyandot people, as well as those who the selective history of the United States has failed to name and recognize. As we gather on this culturally significant and sacred land, let us mindfully consider the impact that historic acts of violence have had on our unearned privilege to be here today.
Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, definitely take time to reflect on that, and like it's always important to do land acknowledgements. I know Ignite's definitely gonna start doing them before every meeting we have, just to create kind of that space and that kind of thinking, critical thinking. So sorry, I'm gonna find the slide. So now what we're gonna do is move into breakout rooms for most of the remainder of our time. We can come back at the end for about like 5 or so minutes. If you have to leave early, no worries. But we have about 30 minutes, so this is really great. So can you all see, wait, sorry. I'm gonna launch a poll right now. I've never done this before. I made a poll, and basically this poll is going to determine what breakout room you're put in based on the issues that we've kind of highlighted here. And so what's gonna happen in the breakout rooms is that you're gonna talk about, I can remember, your voting plans. So making a voting plan, if you've made one, talk more about that. Then you're also going to talk about how you're going to stay civically engaged after the election. And then you're also going to talk about whichever topic you choose based on your breakout room. So I will go ahead and
I'm gonna pop in for just a quick sec before we do breakout rooms. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm the president of Ignite. I use she, her pronouns. Maggie, our awesome Ignite fellow from Ignite National, is hosting a college council with all of the other Northeast chapters and fellows this coming Monday from 5 to 6:30. She's going to drop the information in the chat, but it's super casual. We're going to have some fun speakers like Senator Tina Maharath from the Columbus area and some other awesome women. It's a good opportunity for you to network with other Ignite members and for you AMWA and GirlUp people to continue engaging with our community. Yeah, it's going to be super fun. Would love to see all of you there. And thank you for coming out to make voting plans and talk about issues that affect women with us.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying.